Many Democrats are really scared right now, concerned, alarmed, very alarmed, very deeply concerned. And believe it or not, they are actually agreeing with Republican conservatives. Because what is happening, this is very interesting when I say this. What is happening is that you have Democrats, there are Democrats who, despite the best efforts of Democrats, some of them who are 100% just adamantly opposed, diametrically opposed to Republicans. Day in, day out, they say Republicans are bad, they're evil, they are tyrants and imperialists and capitalists, and down with Republicans, down with conservatives, down with the GOP. To hell with them is what some of these Democrats say, many of them. Notwithstanding, there are Democrats who are now siding with Republicans. Not all Democrats obviously side with Republicans. That would be absurd in the context of the two-party system. Nonetheless, there are Democrats who right now, as of the time of this recording, 11:08 a.m. Friday, East Coast time. It is now spring, April 5 April 2019. Democrats, some of them, they share the same view as some Republicans regarding the southern U.S. border, the U.S. southern border, and border security. Believe it or not, things have changed, because what has happened is you now have factions within the Democratic Party that have splintered, and you have fringe, lunatic, extreme socialists embedded within the Democratic Liberal Party, the Liberal Democratic Party. Has this always been the case? Well, there have always been extreme components, factions within the different parties. One can argue that on the right, within the Republican Conservative Party, Conservative Republican Party, there have always been moderates. There have always been rhinos, those who tend to be not so Republican, but claim nonetheless to be somewhat Republican. Some Republicans who are fiscally conservative on some matters and not so conservative on other matters. And then you have the extreme right, those who believe in certain things that are considered extreme views, which is the consensus of some liberal Democrats. So you have Democrats who will say, those Republicans over there, they're extreme in their views. They're crazy, they're evil, they're maniacal. They don't want abortion. They don't believe in women's rights. They don't believe in human rights. They're greedy. All they want is money. These people are all about squashing our freedoms. Therefore, they're tyrants. They're tyrannical. They're despotic, nihilists, rulers, czars, elitists. These Republicans, they're all about the destruction of our liberal democratic freedoms. Therefore, they are extreme, right-wing, fascists, wannabe Gestapos, i.e. Nazis. Well, in the same context, equally, someone can point out and argue that within the left, on the left, you have the same. You can have extreme views on the left as well that are just as equally extreme as the extreme views of the right. So what then is the real difference between the extreme left, socialist, Marxist, liberal Democrats, those who want for there to be a Star Trek Borg-like society where everyone has to think, must think, it is dictated, it is required and demanded that everyone think the same thing, because if you don't, you are a social outcast. You are ostracized from your community, from your tribe, from your clan, from your community. You're alienated if you do not believe what we believe on the left. I'm not saying I'm on the left. I'm saying that there are those on the left in the Liberal Democratic Party who believe that you must believe everything that they believe. Everything to a T. That is exactly on point to that intersection of two dots overlapping, two lines intersecting. That X, Y, Z axis, those axes, you must connect on that human telepathic connectedness, connecting level of reality, understanding, and belief. In that understanding, you are to believe everything that you are told, that you are taught, and if you deviate from that, you've gone outside, you've diverged, and just like the book, you're now divergent, you're now deviant, you're now an enemy of the state. Because on the far left, you have to believe everything that the left believes, or you will be branded, marked, an enemy of the state. The state controls everything on the extreme left. They control your medication. They control your housing. They control your money. And by the way, on the extreme left, money is evenly distributed so that you can never have any more money than anyone else. You must have the same amount of money as everyone else. You will be allocated, therefore allotted, a certain share. You will be given money in which to live in a box that the state controls. That is the far left mentality. That is communism. That is fascism. That is the Borg. Some liberal Democrats don't really understand because of their naivete, because they're gullible and impressionable. They're closed-minded and don't think for themselves. Same is true of the right in terms of those who are equally impressionable, gullible, who don't think for themselves, who are closed-minded. The same can happen on both sides. Back to the left. You have members of the Liberal Democratic Party who do not understand what the ulterior motive is of their colleagues. That ultimately what their colleagues would ideally, optimally prefer is for corporations to be state-controlled. No one makes any more money than anyone else. Children, they wear uniforms in schools. No Mickey Mouse, no Donald Duck, no Disney, no Transformers, no cartoons. Children can no longer have that enjoyment in their lives. They're stripped of all that. Everything is an institution. Everything is Stalinist. Everything is bleak in society. Nothing's colorful anymore. Nothing's delightful. Nothing's happy, joyful. Everything is just stark. and gray, battleship gray, just like on a day when there's overcast, and some perceive that to be dreary, miserable, sad, sullen. That is what some human beings want for society. They want to take away all the fun, all the joy, all the happiness, all the pleasantries, and remove all of those things from society. Does that sound crazy to you? Does that seem far-fetched? Does that seem outrageous? Listen to the narrative of those on the left. Listen, and you will see the gradients. You will see the slivers. You will see the different slices, the different intervals, the different opinions of those within the liberal Democratic Party. The different colorings, the different nuances, the different statements, the different opinions, sayings, writings, broadcasts. And you will find that there are those who, again, their whole goal is to have children in schools who never win. No one ever wins. Everyone wins. You play baseball when you're a child now. You play football, and there is no winner. You don't learn what winning means, other than you're told now that everyone wins, and there is no loser. So the team is one. Everyone wins together, and there is no individual winner. Imagine the ramifications of that in society. To have a child who can never win at something individually, can never be an individual winner, can never experience or understand, can never fathom what it means to win. So if that child is attacked by a bully, approached by a bully, confronted by a bully, the child can never win. The child has no real concept, no real notion of what it means to win in life at anything. Because that child is merely a cog in the machine, is merely a cog in the system, isn't an individual anymore, because is now devoid of humanity and individual uniqueness and personality. There is no uniqueness anymore. There is no personality anymore. That human being, that child, is just a shell that can never win, because the child is programmed to never be a winner, that it can never win anything, and that child is a loser as an individual. That is the reality of some school systems now. This is what John Titor, the author of John Titor, whoever wrote the John Titor story, whether true or false, whether it's true that there is a time traveler who later was referred to by a group of individuals, thus given the name John Titor, whoever authored the story talks about this type of dystopian future. There have been many different futures that have been depicted, described, characterized, illustrated, written about, authored. The John Titor story, half of it was sanitized from the internet. Somehow, some way, it was mysteriously erased. A lot of people who have heard the John Titor story, I would say 95%, have no idea that there's another half of the story. They've never seen that other part of the story. For some reason, it was removed from the internet, and it was thought to be gone and no longer available by those who removed it for whatever reason it was removed. So there came to be this segment of the human population, observers, who first got wind of this John Titor story that had emerged at some point. And that group, that body, that segment, again, of the human population, when learning of the John Titor story, believed that the story that it read, that it saw, that it observed, that it knew about, believed that that was the entirety of the story, not knowing that there is another half of the story that is hidden from the public for some reason. And that the IBM 5100 element within that story is an official state secret. It is something that, for whatever reason, the government does, and I'm saying global world government because it's not just America. You come to find there's a United Nations. You come to find that there is NATO. It's not just the US. People in elite circles, a group, a factions, don't want for the public to know the truth about the John Titor story for some reason. And that is why 50% of the story was sanitized, scrubbed, deleted, removed from the internet. Well, as fate would have it, someone found the other 50%, the other half of the story. And that information was made available to the public again. But nonetheless, and despite such, believe it or not, even those who had initially heard about John Titor and the story and read the story still to this day do not know, believe it or not, that there is another half of the story, because whoever removed it from the internet, scrubbed the story, the other half of it, deleted the other half of it from the internet, went to great lengths such that the first set of people who learned of the story, who read the story, would only know about the first half of the story. So 95% of people who you talk to who have read the story, who have read some of the story, who know about John Titor in some way, the John Titor story, 95%, actually I'm going to go with 98. 98% approximately have no idea that there's another half of the story out there, out here. And I have read the other half of the John Titor story. And I will attest to you. I attest to you that it is absolutely an eye-opener. Here's why. The future that John Titor talks about is not so far-fetched as it would seem from the story if you have only learned of and read the first half. Reading the second half of the story, and the hairs on my arms are standing up when I say this, reading the other half of the story, it sounds and seems a lot more plausible if you have the full picture of what it was and what it is that the author, whoever that is, whether it's a real person that has time traveled in some way, some fashion, somehow, through some type of technological advancement, some DARPA project, IARPA, DARPA, U.S. government, Department of Defense, 20 and back, project, whatever, who knows? It's an enigma. Whether it's an attorney in Florida who wrote the story and he is somehow like the Vril Society of Germany that led up to Nazi Germany, he's somehow channeling information and he thinks he's creating some false narrative, some story, and say, for example, hypothetically, that there is an attorney who he and his relatives, they penned a story and said, ha ha ha, tee hee hee, this is going to be great. We're going to make up this fantastic, fabulous story that is completely false. It's a story, it's fiction, and we're going to play it off as if it were and is real. Even so, the debunkers of the John Titor story, I am the only person to date who has stated, who has hypothesized, who has postulated that consider the following. Maybe, just maybe, despite the fact that these people who call themselves debunkers. They claim to have used voice software to analyze the lawyer and his relatives, and that the voice of the lawyer is the same syntactically and semantically as the author of the John Titor story. Sounds impressive on the surface. It sounds definitive and conclusive. One can say, yes, the debunker, he's right. Look, if you use the software and you apply it to the voice of the lawyer, he speaks in the same way that the author of John Titor writes the John Titor story. It's an exact match, 99%. Let's go with 100. The software says it's 100% identical, fit, match. Therefore, it's the lawyer. It's the attorney. He wrote the story. He has a relative, a brother, whomever, who their relative, their uncle, grandfather, someone worked at IBM, and the son also has some type of proficiency in computers. So the family, they put this together. It was a family effort, and they made up this story of John Titor. Hey, maybe that's true. Maybe that is absolutely a fact and a reality. But consider this. Maybe, unbeknownst to the lawyer and his family, maybe, just maybe, again, not knowing among them, maybe they channeled something that is a reality. Does that sound far-fetched? Does that seem crazy to you? That someone would write a story thinking that it's merely fiction? Thinking that it's merely a work of absolute, pure, total, utter fiction? And yet it's true? Somehow, some way, in the cosmos, in the multiverse, in space-time, they have channeled something that is actually, factually, reality-based, and they just have no idea that it is a real thing. The movie, Pelican Brief, The Pelican Brief. Have you ever seen the movie, The Pelican Brief? Have you ever seen the movie Mel Gibson stars in called Conspiracy Theory? Where does the expression rather, not just conspiracy, but the phrase, the expression, the coined phrase, conspiracy theory, where does that come from? What's the etymology of that? Some have said that the expression was coined such by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency to discredit individuals who stumbled upon the truth, who came to know the deeper truth, who were exposed to the truth, so that when said individuals come to understand the truths that are supposed to be hidden from mainstream society, there's a cover story. And the cover story is that those who stumbled upon the truth are insane lunatics. They're crazy people. They are conspiracy theorists. Tinfoil hat people. They wear tinfoil hats. They are truthers, and they are totally, absolutely delusional, insane, mad people, and out of their minds, crazy lunatic. Popeye, cuckoo. Conspiracy theorists. Some argue that the phrase, the expression conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorists, was created by the Central Intelligence Agency itself. Does that sound far-fetched? That the CIA may have created the expression conspiracy theory to discredit those or seek to defame, discredit those who inadvertently, somehow, by way of their own doing, or indirectly, again, inadvertently, they just stumble somehow upon the truth. And of course, our government must be quick to conduct damage control, thereby applying the expression to those individuals in media, No, our government is not involved in that activity. That cover-up is not a real cover-up. We did not cover up anything. Those people are merely conspiracy theorists. We are not involved in time travel. We are not conducting time travel experiments. We don't know anything about a planet called Serpo. There is no Philadelphia experiment. We don't know anything about aliens. That's what SETI is for. One day, maybe we'll find intelligent bacteria in a zillion years from now. But until then, there is no water on Mars. Oh, well, we found a few drops of it, but largely, mostly, chiefly, there is no alien life that we have ever been in contact with. Oh, those objects that Secure Team and other groups see flying around on telescope, space, we don't know what that is other than space debris, perhaps some lights that are created through some type of cosmic background radiation interference pattern. We're not understanding any of that. That's what NASA's for. We can direct you to NASA and they can explain it to you. And when the feed goes out, it's because of some type of electrical interference with regard to the camera systems on board the International Space Station. Other than that, we don't have any concrete evidence that aliens exist. Those people who say otherwise and allege that we know something that we're not telling you, they are conspiracy theorists. Some people will argue, and do argue, that conspiracy theory, the expression, the term, comes from the CIA itself. I don't know, man. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. What do I know? I'm just a Grover. And if I did know, I don't know if I would tell you. I don't know if I would share that with the public. Here's why. The John Titor story, Pelican Brief, Philadelphia experiment. You have all these people who have come out from the military and government as a whole, officials, not just military, but civilian government contractors who have worked at military bases facilities, scientists, subject matter experts. I understand how fallacies work. Just because there are experts doesn't necessarily mean that someone purporting to be an expert or someone saying, this is true, A is true, because B involves experts. I understand. Someone can point out, well, Grove, that's a fallacy. You can't say it's true because experts are involved. I understand that. What I also understand is that the Philadelphia experiment seems to be something that actually took place. On the other hand, you have a story that was created that the Philadelphia experiment is fake, bogus, made up, totally unreal, and they actually name a person who supposedly made it up. Huh. Really? So I'm to believe that there has never been a scenario involving our U.S. government wanting to travel to distant galaxies without using rocket fuel, to do so on the cheap, inexpensively, and that we have never experimented with taking coils, wrapping a ship, frigate, whatever, naval vessel, destroyer, whatever class, whatever type of seagoing vessel you can conceive of, in the hierarchy, index, list, etc., array, assortment of different types of seagoing naval vessels. We've never taken coils and wrapped the ship with coils and sent electricity, energy that is, down those coils to see if we can cloak a ship and make it disappear, that is, become invisible to radar. I'm supposed to believe that our government's never tried that. ever before. According to this body of information over here that says that the Philadelphia experiment didn't happen. Despite the fact that there are whistleblowers, that there are these experts, many different people, individuals who over time have conceded, that is, it is their contention that there was an experiment involving cloaking technology being experimented, cloaking technology being tested, evaluated, and during those experiments, that set of experiments, something strange took place, some bizarre phenomena occurred in that the ship, one or more of them, became not just invisible to radar, but somehow was engulfed in electronic fog and disappeared into hyperspace. I'm supposed to believe that that didn't ever happen at any time in human history. I believe it is known on record that the Germans, the Nazis at the time, Hitler and the Third Reich, they experimented also with time travel, with the Die Glocke Nazi bell. And that they used some type of red, mercury, fog, some type of strange chemical composition, whatever that may have been, and attempted to create a torsion warp field to essentially torsion warp spin an object into a void, that is a warp, electromagnetic warp field, so that that capsule could be a time capsule and disappear into time-space, reappear somewhere else in time in order to maintain Nazi domination on any and all timelines that the Germans might have, the German Nazis, the Nazis might have access to. So not only were they trying to ensure dominance on one timeline, they wanted to ensure dominance on other alternate timelines so that those timelines would all link up and there would be no doubt that what they were attempting to achieve on this timeline would occur. They wanted to ensure dominance by traveling through space-time. That's how much they wanted to ensure future global domination, is by traveling through time to know, to be certain, with no uncertainty, that they would dominate Earth. So, that's a story. It's written. It's documented. I've seen the documents. I've seen the information. And I've seen how our U.S. government has attempted to do the same thing. There's EagleWorks Propulsion, Advanced Propulsion Laboratories, EagleWorks, NASA, DARPA, IXS, the IXS Enterprise, India, Zulu, Sierra, IXS Enterprise. If our government is showing you something, our government has already achieved that. And the reason our government is showing you that is that it is possible you may see the effects of that experiment. And so for reasons of plausible deniability, the government, our government, some government, has to reveal that technology to you publicly so that if it needs to point to that, it can say, our government can say, this is the technology that created that scenario. As a result of this technology, that is why this has come to be. There's a reason for our government showing you the IXS Enterprise. If we have created renderings to then be made, that is drawings, schematics, blueprints, to be made available to the public, there are several reasons. One, people in the public will become government employees. And on the timeline of reality, will then go on to work on that project, DARPA IXS, Enterprise, Advanced Propulsion Technologies, in conjunction with Eagle Works. So it's advertising, because you need humans to build those types of machines, and you need a lot of them. With the aid, that is assistance of robots, computers, automation. So our government broadcasts that because it's an advertisement. Ultimately, that technology will be made. It will be created. On the time loop of it all, our government already created it if it's showing it to you. So we already made it. It was already built. Our government's not going to show you the DARPA IXS Enterprise if it's something that's theoretical. Most people in mainstream society believe that these types of systems, these types of machines, these types of programs, they believe that they're under development, that they're currently being developed. It's not the way it works. If you're seeing these things in the public domain, it's because they've already been built, they've already been created, they've already been made. That's the way that it works. That's a deeper truth. Everything that is theoretical on the surface, that is said to be under development, is already. It already exists. It's already been created. It's already been built. It's already been designed, and it's already in existence. I'll give you an example. Some months ago, our government was saying that pretty soon there is going to be a company that attempts to put a laser on a drone for the very first time in human history. In other words, there was research underway by the military and contractors to attempt to put a laser on an autonomous system for the very first time. In other words, a Terminator-like drone with a laser, armed with a laser. That's what the government said. I can show you the article. I can show you the officials who were making that statement, those statements. It's in the news media. You can look it up. You can Google it. And it says, basically, that the U.S. military will very soon be attempting to, will have a laser for the very first time ever on a robotic killing machine. In other words, a drone. Whether that be a bipedal drone, like you see in Terminator, a humanoid-looking robot that walks, that runs, that jumps, that does backflips, or an aerial vehicle, a UAV, either or, at some point, one, if not both, will be armed with lasers. And it was the first time ever because it had never been done before, according to the media that reported this, and the officials on record as having stated and said this. When I read that, I thought to myself, wow, this is absurd. The U.S. military still wants for people to believe that in everything that we have created, we still haven't armed one of these UAVs, one of these bipedal humanoid-looking robotic killing machines, in other words, robots, Terminators. We haven't armed them with one single high-energy lethal laser. Well, that's really interesting because high-energy lethal lasers have existed for decades now, literally more than 20 years. If you go back and you look at Boeing and what the Boeing company, Phantom Works, Skunk Works, Boeing, when you look at what they've created that's on public record, that's declassified, in other words, it's no longer classified, but it had been. Boeing put high-energy lethal lasers on Boeing aircrafts that were created for the military. In other words, there was a militarized military version of a 747-like aircraft that was armed with surveillance, optics, cameras, and guess what? Lasers. And you can actually see the renderings, you can actually see the videos, you can actually see where it was tested, and it worked perfectly. That was over 20 years ago. So, I'm pretty sure if I recall correctly, the plane that flew for Boeing that Boeing created, the Boeing plane that was armed with a high-energy lethal laser, that was an autonomous plane. I mean, it was piloted by an aircraft. I'm sorry, it was piloted by a human is what I meant to say. It was piloted by a human operator of a joystick. There was no actual human on board that Boeing aircraft. You see the aircraft, it's a drone, okay? It looks like a 747 or some type of Boeing aircraft. You look at it, you're like, oh, that's a Boeing jet, like a commercial jet. And you could see the video. It was on YouTube. And Boeing was like, yeah, we already created this. Look, we created it for the U.S. military. It's flying, they're like, and it's human operated by joystick. There is no human on board this plane. It is a drone. And so they were flying this aircraft, Boeing, like jumbo jet. It was, sleeker than that. Wasn't like, Delta Wing, like stealth aircraft. It was just a Boeing plane that if it weren't militarized is what I meant to say. If it weren't a military product, humans would be on board it. So again, for emphasis, if you see this thing flying overhead, you would look at it and say, oh, there's a commercial aircraft with humans on board. But this particular Boeing aircraft had no humans on board. It was robotic, that is autonomous, semi-autonomous, and it was armed with a laser. And it worked perfectly, and it could shoot down missiles. That was the whole purpose. It was to shoot down incoming enemy missiles. So imagine a fleet of these Boeing aircraft. They're armed with lasers, just like any type of drone, and they shoot down incoming ICBMs. Boeing created that decades ago. Flash forward to 20 years after the fact, the U.S. military, playing psychological Operation Psywar on the general public, makes some ridiculous statement claiming that our government, for the first time ever, is going to attempt to put a high-energy lethal laser on a drone. And I'm thinking to myself, are they serious? We've already done that. We did it decades ago. But for some reason, the Defense Intelligence Agency with its supercomputers, which I'm convinced that it's pretty much like George Orwell's book, DIA is just really a supercomputer with some humans who happen to work there. And it, for whatever reason, wants for people to believe that these technologies have not been created yet, even though the data's right there in plain sight, in full frontal view, on the periphery, in the peripheral, where you can watch the video from 20 years ago where we already did that. So our government's playing mind games with the general public. And some algorithm says, okay, we need for the general public to believe that we've never done this, even though we already told the general public 20-something years ago that we've already done this. To keep the general public mainstream lulled into this sense of whatever it is that the government wants for the public to have a sense of. We've already armed drones with lasers. So when I made this statement on the internet, I said, that's ridiculous. We already did this 20 years ago. Why are these officials going on record and claiming that we haven't done this yet and that in a year and a half from now, we will have done that? This is like 2018. So they were saying that like by this year, 2019, we would for the first time ever have a drone armed with a laser. I'm like, this is preposterous. As soon as I countered that information online on social media, a few months down the road, the government changed its story. And there was another broadcast where it said, okay, we just want to let everyone know we already have drones armed with lasers. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were telling people that there was a contractor in like Monterey, California, or San Diego, or somewhere in California that was working on doing that for the first time, and it would be done and accomplished and achieved by like 2019. The story just keeps changing. The narrative just keeps changing to reflect whatever it is that the government wants for people to believe at the time. It doesn't want for people to believe that we have drones armed with lasers in 2018. And it wants for people to believe that Atlas, the robot created by DARPA, is some clumsy, big, clunky looking, like beast of a monstrosity, some big Dumbo looking like, I'm Atlas, look at me, how clunky and awkward I walk on my cable connected to some type of like system of like human operator, like I'm a marionette puppet. I'm so clumsy, awkward. My name is Atlas. In the future, 20 million years from now, once our government perfects robotics, I will be able to assist humans on missions to Saturn. I'm like, dude, just show us the real thing. Okay? That's not a real robot. Okay? Show us the Terminator. Of course, the government at the time wants you to believe that this clunky, stupid looking thing called Atlas is going to be on future missions to like Mars and Venus and all this kind of stuff. Flash forward a few months down the road from that. Now all of a sudden, Atlas is a sleek looking robot that can do flips, backflips, side flips, and he has some type of photon cannon. You don't see him shoot a laser, but he clearly has a gun that does not shoot ammo. It looks like it is a photon weapon. Am I making this up? Of course I am not. You can see it online, and it is a DARPA Boston Dynamics video where they show you that, and I'm pretty sure he's not even connected to a cable anymore plugged into the wall socket. No, dude, no. Now he's like punching bricks through like cinder blocks. He's like running and jumping and doing flips off walls, backward flip, side flip, forward flip, and he's armed with something that does not look like it shoots ammo. It shoots some type of photon weapon cannon laser. Does that sound outrageous? Dude, it's a U.S. government video that was made public. So now they've let you know that there are Terminators. Okay? And then you've got the little mini robot that like creeps through like hallways and opens doors and whatnot. At first they wanted you to believe that it will help you do your dishes and put dishes into the dishwasher and take them out and dry them for you. Like a Roomba. No, dude. That thing is made to murder people. To creep through lairs, labyrinths, through fortresses, facilities, through spaces. That thing is made to assassinate people. Okay? Does that thing look like it's a friendly robot? Yeah, when they showed it like washing dishes, that was pretty cool. But I knew it was made to assassinate humans, dude. Okay? There are the micro drones, dude, that fly through airspaces, airways, pathways. They're invisible, dude. They send out some type of countermeasure so you can't see them. It does something to your human mind, and it anesthetizes you on some type of wavelength, some type of light, wavelength, infrared, some level of the spectrum where it folds itself with light. It's wrapped inside light. It has some type of multronic, nanotronic system. In other words, there are nanotronics, nano systems embedded. Some type of molecular electronics inside this chassis of a sphere, okay? It's like the size of a small, like, baseball, okay? And it sends out, emanates some type of light frequency that makes it invisible to the human eye. If you see it pass by, it isn't there because you don't really see it, but it's there, okay? It's on some level of the light spectrum. It's on some level of the spectrum where when it emits this frequency, this pattern, it emanates this energy pattern. It's invisible. It's just like when you look up on any given day and you see a plane and it's flying from your observational vantage viewpoint on the ground. You're like, oh, I see a plane. It's a commercial aircraft, I believe. Oh, it's up there in the clouds. Oh, it's flying. Okay, now it's over here where there aren't so many clouds, and that's a patch of blue sky. And I see it, and it's a patch of blue sky. Excuse me. It's a patch of blue sky now. It's no longer in the clouds. From your view, you think it's blue sky. But then all of a sudden, that plane disappears. And you're like, whoa, hold on. Oh, where did it go? And then you realize, oh, from where you're standing on the ground looking up into the sky, it looks like blue sky. And it looks like it's no longer in the clouds where it had been because the clouds are over there. And this is blue sky over here. But that's an optical illusion because there are clouds, but just not so much of cloud pattern that it appears blue. So it's not really blue sky. It is blue sky, but there are also clouds there that you can't see. It's an optical illusion. That's what invisible micro drones do. They're able to cloak themselves right in front of you and pass by you, and you don't see them because it's an optical illusion. That was already created. We've already created that. So back to the John Titor story. So John Titor, the story was written by, supposedly, according to these debunkers, it was written by an attorney in Florida. I've talked about this. Okay, so maybe it was. Was that attorney? Was that lawyer? Was he channeling something unbeknownst to himself? Okay, what is he picking up on? Where does this story come from that was written that was half of it removed by our government from the internet? Do you know about the Vril Society? Have you ever heard of Vril? Have you ever heard of this woman who she was somehow channeling some entities from another star system or from somewhere in our star system, somewhere distant or wherever it was? Aldebaran? Have you ever heard of something like this? The Vril Society, which the Nazis found out about, and they absorbed her into Nazi society because she was able to pick up on this information that she said was being disseminated to her, sent to her from some entities in deep, distant space, and they were showing her pictures in her mind of how to build rocketry, spacecrafts, discs that the Germans then made. They actually made these things to have some type of aerial space superiority over their enemies and opponents. This is a hidden history. It's a history that was hidden by our government, and it is now known and declassified in mainstream society on some levels. So the story of John Titor, why would it similarly be sanitized and scrubbed from the internet? Whoever sanitized or attempted to sanitize and scrub the other half of the John Titor story, it seems to me like someone was picking up on something, probably the attorney in Florida. He was picking up on something that he thought was maybe a dream or some idea that just flashed into his mind that he had. And it's about this time traveler from the future. When you read the other half of the story, it actually sounds like right now. It doesn't sound far-fetched at all, man. Because, excuse me, because when you hear the other half of the story, human society isn't really gone. Human society still exists. There are still communities, and there are people who pray in groups as Christians and as faith-based groups and communities. Americans are closer in some respects than they had been. Closer than they had been. In schools, the American flag is no longer saluted, and it is no longer saluted, and it is no longer saluted. A friend of mine from out west, from college, I talked to him some time ago, and he shared with me that in schools, the daily flag salute is no longer done. And I said to him, what are you talking about, man? Like, of course, like, public schools still salute the flag. And he's like, no, man. No, they don't. Grove, they don't. I was like, dude, come on, man. Come on, bro. Like, man, we did that in high school. We did that in junior high school. He said, no, man. No, they've done away with that now. I looked it up on the internet. Boom. Mandela effect. He was right. I said, whoa. So, knowing what I know about the other half of the John Titor story that most people don't know about, it doesn't really sound that much different from now. It really doesn't. So why was it removed, this other half of the story, from the internet? The debunker dude that goes on his videos and he claims that this lawyer made up this story, if he did, and if it's true, then why is it a state secret that the government doesn't want for people to know about or tried to remove the information as much as they could? Why is it so secret? And why doesn't the government ever make any type of official statement in terms of it if it's totally just fiction, if it's totally just made up? Why is that? Huh? What is it about the John Titor story? There's something to it, man. There's absolutely, definitely something to it. I actually pen tested this story in quotation marks, during the course of my work as a government contractor, at some different government installations. I won't go into details, but I actually pen tested the narrative to see what type of response I would get from, I'll just say, a space-based authority. And when I communicated some of the information regarding the story, really interesting occurrences in terms of the communications that I received in response to the name John Titor. Really interesting, man. So, is it just fiction? Is it just made up? If it is, then why do NASA employees, why are there employees at NASA who airbrush planets to give the impression that the planets look a certain way when they really don't? Which we know about now. We know NASA does that. We know that NASA has a history of airbrushing Antarctica and these different parts of space, planets, celestial bodies. Airbrushes them so that you think a certain way and you believe a certain thing. I believe that the John Titor story has some type of significance in terms of international global affairs. The other thing he talks about in the story, mad cow disease. Some people have never really made this connection. Think about this. Why do the Greys, why are they so concerned about cattle? Why are they mutilating cattle? What are they looking for with these lasers, these perfect laser incisions that are found in these cattle, that are found to have been incised? These cattle are incised. They're split open with these lasers, and different organs are taken from these cattle, and there's no trace of blood. That's not a satanic cult. These satanic cults are not using precision lasers over the course of decades to surreptitiously go around to these different states with absolutely no trace and open up surgically with laser alien, that is gray Anunnaki technology, cattle, take out their organs perfectly with no trace of blood. Human beings do not have the technological capability to do that. It's not a satanic cult. So what are the gray aliens looking for? Oh, that's right. Probably mad cow disease. Have you ever thought about that? Wasn't that the concern of the John Titor timeline? They were looking for mad cow disease because it did some fucked up shit and it fucked up society before the friction and everything that was taking place between the different world global governments with their like nuclear saber rattling. Wasn't that it, man? Yeah. So on some other timeline, the Greys are trying to find the mad cow and eliminate it to alter that timeline, is my belief, before some bad fucked up shit can happen. And that future timeline that John Titor talks about in his story, whoever authored it, is malleable. Is John Titor a rogue time traveler lying to humans about the future? Did he go rogue? Is he trying to provide information to try to steer us in a certain direction for his own benefit? Some people believe that he altered the past already, and that's why the Y2K bug was mostly a non-event. I have a mathematics friend, who's a PhD in mathematics. He actually worked on the Y2K problem. But dude, the 2000 coming up problem, 2000, what is it? Oh, it used to be 2038, but I believe it's now 2036 because the Mandela effect changed it. It used to be 2038. It's either 2036 or 2038. It's the Linux, IBM, Unix timeout problem issue, Are we going to be able to avoid that one as well? There's something to the John Titor story, man. There's something more to it. I know there's something more to it, man.